Hi guys, it's Brooke here. I have a super quick favor to ask. When you have a moment, please take just a second to give this podcast a 5-star review. This will help me to continue the podcast and continue to bring these resources to the community. Thank you so much for that 5-star review.
I was just growing up in a world that didn't understand me, that wasn't ready for me. And it's funny because my older son often says to me when I say, I was born at the wrong time. I was born, 30 years too early. And his response, which is a great one, Mom, you were born right when you were supposed to be, because if you hadn't gone through all the experiences you did, you wouldn't be able to help all the people across those different, what I call domains, help them now.
Hey there, it's Brooke, and welcome to Finding Hope on the Spectrum, where I have heart-to-heart conversations with parents, professionals, and autistic individuals sharing personal insight and life experiences. Together, we dive deep into supports, programs, and stories that offer inspiration, insight, and most importantly, hope for the neurodiverse community. Before we begin with today's topic, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. And if you know someone who this would be helpful for, please pass it along. Remember to always stay curious, be kind, and have an open heart. All right, welcome back to Finding Hope on the Spectrum. I'm super excited today to have this conversation. And I have a really special guest today. We have Lisa Richer, who's an advocate, co-author, and leader, and a mom of 2 neurodiverse sons. And after navigating the overwhelm of balancing work life and supporting her children, Lisa turned her lived experience into a mission. With a background in elite gymnastics and a deep understanding of resilience, she created Journey to Bloom, a path dedicated to helping families feel seen, supported, and empowered. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Well, let's start. You have, such a unique journey. I loved learning all about your experience, your life experience and professional experience. And you were an elite gymnast and you worked in corporate and now you're in advocacy. So what would you say the thread is that connects all of those chapters for you?
Yeah, I think, the number one thread is I too am neurodivergent. I grew up undiagnosed, unknowing, but always knowing something was different.
Mm-hmm.
So I have lived through all of these things as a neurodivergent individual. And then I was gifted 2 children, each neurodivergent. And so that's the thread that connects all of it together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you have that's such a diverse level of experience. And I know that, when you were born neurodivergent, you didn't fully realize it until later, as you mentioned. So what led you to kind of consider that might be going on, or what were your experiences that, helped you kind of uncover that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm going to start with, I hope no one has to go through the experiences I did to uncover it. I'll start there. So first, what led, now this part, I don't wish not anyone on, but like my kids. So each through their different things going on and learning more about them. I think we talked about this too. And I talked to many people that have either a neurodivergent child or they later find out that they are neurodivergent. A lot of things just didn't make sense growing up because I knew I felt what I felt and I knew I thought what I thought, but I was told my thoughts are wrong and my feelings were not on point.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, all of that was not true. It was that I was just growing up in a world that didn't understand me, that wasn't ready for me. And it's funny because my older son often says to me when I say, I was born at the wrong time. I was born, 30 years too early. And his response, which is a great one, Mom, you were born right when you were supposed to be, because if you hadn't gone through all the experiences you did, you wouldn't be able to help all the people across those different, what I call domains, help them now. And I was like, okay, you're right. He puts me back in my place or, brings a different perspective.
Yeah.
And what led me, I got diagnosed with anxiety in my 20s, so before I was a mom, but no one ever told me what that meant. What does it mean to have it? How do I work with it? How do I leverage it? How do I use it? Like I was never given the tools. So yes, then at that point, it was kind of like, here's a label. And I'm a big believer that diagnoses inform, they don't define. But when I look back on my life, I was given that label, but I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah.
It's just like reading ingredients, but having no idea what any of them are.
Right.
You know, so as I went through life with my kids, and where I'm saying I hope no one has to go through this, at COVID, had a vaccine injury and it threw my complete nervous system out of whack. My vestibular system, my cranial rhythm, everything just completely out of whack.
Wow.
And I say I hit the ashes of burnout. Like I was down for the count. That is what led me to consider and experience what is going on. And through the journey over the last 6 years to healing, which they say takes as long as it did to get there, so I've got lots of years to go, that's what helped me uncover. It was finding someone that really could meet me where I was and walk through the journey with me, unpack things in the past, bring them into the present, connect those dots, build those bridges for me, just like I do with my clients, of building the bridges and connecting the dots for others. So that's the experiences that led me to start uncovering those things. And that was in the midst of, this was 6 years ago. So my kids are now 15 and 19. So they were well on their way to understanding what was happening. And all of a sudden mom went from being everything to everybody to being nothing to anybody.
Wow. What a journey. I mean, and what an example of resilience, that you just went for it and, addressed it and got to where you are today, being able to help others.
Thank you. And I was helping others before. I just wasn't helping myself.
Yeah.
So my business originally started in 2016, and then I officially made it official in 18. So 4 years before I hit burnout, I was doing, and my whole life, I was the person that came to be a fixer, to be the solver, which is also part of, I believe now, what led me to burnout based on my conversations with my therapist is you were asked to do things and you were put in positions and situations. And I only knew life in survival mode, which is really fascinating when I look back on it now, how much makes sense to me and my actions and reactions. And now today I get to help others through all of their experiences, with neurodiversity being the prism that lights that table with whoever I'm working with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating. That'd be a whole nother topic to talk about, the difference of living in survival mode to where you are today. I'm sure that would be very helpful for many individuals to flesh that out and understand that. And I'd love to talk to you more about that at another time. I'm very curious about it. But let's talk about the corporate world. So, you also, went into the corporate world, and I know we talked a little bit when we met before about that. And what was that like for you during that time?
So, it's interesting. I was working as a gymnastics director after college, but I felt like it was a crutch. When I look back on it, I now know it wasn't a crutch. It is actually me at my most grounded and confident and clear place. But I was coaching, and I decided, oh, you know what? I think I need a corporate job. I'm not meant for corporate. Corporate isn't meant for me, and I'm not meant for corporate. It's just, and this will explain some of those experiences. And maybe there is some pieces of corporate that I can fit in, but I decided to go into corporate, and I spent years and years and years in corporate, leading teams, doing sales, running staffing, like divisions of a staffing firm, and then being like a team sales excellence leader in a call center for an education company. And then I fell backwards in HR, ended up in HR leadership, working with upwards of 60 plus VPs, EVPs, SVPs who had their ways of thinking and what they wanted to do. And it's interesting because when I was working I say corporate proper, because when I was working in the staffing industry, we had somebody doing our decks for us. Like, we were literally there to sell, to recruit, and to staff. And so I did a lot of those conversations. And that's that middle piece, right? That we were talking about when we met. And that middle is, I do call it the messy middle, the projects, like the deep conversations where I'm peeling back the layers of the onion, I'm getting clear and I'm getting confident and I'm getting the courage to keep asking deeper questions to uncover what does somebody really need? Like even when I was in the staffing world, what problems are you trying to solve? What people do you really need to staff for? Well, that's what it says on paper. But do you really want what's on paper? Or do you want what isn't written down and what you don't necessarily know is happening? And so I was doing all of these things years ago in corporate, what I call my journey map now, what I call my ripe ideas roadmap now. Those things were always happening. I just didn't have names for them. And I would sit in this muck, in this mess, and I would get met with combativeness. I would get met with, you're too sensitive. You're asking too many questions. You're being just defensive. You're interrupting us. You are not letting me get my point across. Don't take notes because then you're not listening. But if I didn't take notes, I would interject because I couldn't remember. So it was all these things that I was getting. And then with the projects, I would start with the middle. So when I work on projects, I will put together all the middle part. But if you ask me to put a title to it, or to give the list of like the table of contents or the objectives or a summary of what I'm talking about, I freeze because that's not how my brain works. However, most people in corporate were trained to or told to, and then a lot of them think that way. So I'm not saying it was natural for them, but that's trained, told, or learned that way. Here's the title. Here's the list of things we're going to talk about. Now let's talk about them. Right. And now let's make it tidy. I work from the inside out, and that's how my brain works. So constantly being met with all of those things, it never really worked for me. And I kept finding myself putting myself in these combative things where people would hire me, sometimes as a consultant first, and then as a staff member. When I was a consultant, they listened. But when I became a staff member, now all of a sudden they know more than I do, but they hired me for something. What I've learned is that because I think differently, I get to people's vulnerabilities. And when I get those vulnerabilities, then I become that punching bag. I become that scapegoat. I become that person that they come after because they're not willing to look within and self-reflect and take that accountability. And so it's very uncomfortable. And I lived in a dysregulated nervous system for most of my life. And I even had a recent opportunity to interview for a very high level corporate role where they were trying to bring neuro-inclusivity through their entire organization. And yet the way the headhunter came to me for this role, they asked me for something that as a neurodivergent individual wasn't neuro-inclusive. And so I realized if that's that, what kind of combativeness, what kind of pushback am I going to get, even though they're telling me they want to do it? Because I've been brought in many times to bring in a neuro-inclusive, yet they only want to do it if it fits their vision, not the thread of neuro-inclusiveness across the board. And so I actually said to them, I would be happy to potentially consult with your client if they're interested in it to ensure that they not only hire the right person, but they're hiring it in a neuro-inclusive fashion. But I'm not going to go back into corporate. That was such a big deal for me because even a year ago, definitely 2-3 years ago, I would have jumped on it. It was a high ticket job with a lot of visibility, lots of income. And when I listened to my body, it was telling me, don't do it.
Yeah. Incredible. You've had such a journey of self-awareness, and
it's been a
yeah, but those hard things lead you to growth. And, if you're willing to go there and to really learn, and you're meant to be doing other things, and we're going to talk about the things you're doing. So I just love that. I love that story and hearing kind of the process that you went through and how, it's led to where you are today. And so when it comes to what you're doing now, your advocacy, let's go back to the beginning with that, because that really began with your own child. And what was that turning point like for you?
Yeah. You know, and I want to tie in. I believe the name of the podcast is Finding Hope on the Spectrum,
Yes.
correct? So I'm going to tie that right back to this piece of the journey. It started when my first son was born. He's my autistic one. My other one is ADHD. Both have other coexisting neuro differences, but those are their what initially were diagnosed as their primaries. And so through that journey with him, I had learned and grown so much. I was the parent who dove in, that chose to even stop talking with family members when they said it'll just get better, it'll just go away, it's just a behavior problem. It's kind of like when somebody says, oh, your daughter's so pretty. Yeah, she's pretty strong, she's pretty brave, she's pretty,
Right.
what's after that word that I was trying to solve for. And so in that journey, thankfully, even our very first pediatrician said to me, I still remember like where we were sitting and where my husband was and the conversation. And she said, trust your gut. You were spot on in what your child needed, and you're just becoming a mom. There's so many people that are going to tell you so many things, but I'm getting the feeling that your intuition is spot on. And honestly, that was the first step in my, I want to say, path to be unbecoming to become, finding like who I am as my best self. We'll come back to that phrase later. And that I think was that very first turning point. But then throughout the first couple of years, we couldn't figure out, no one could agree on what was the diagnosis. So it was, he has speech delay, but there were lots of other things. He was a toe walker, hand flapper, got very dysregulated, couldn't wear socks with seams, couldn't wear any shirts with a tag. And back then everybody had tags. We didn't have all these like things, baked into the back. Right. So when I look at it now, there's so many layers of that were like glaringly obvious that he was on the spectrum, but it wasn't identified in part because he's so intelligent. So it's like a series of turning points because we got to California and ended up meeting someone at a little gym, which I don't know, are you familiar with the little gym?
Yep.
Okay. I had worked at one as the director, and I absolutely loved it because it was very developmental and engaging, and it had the core of gymnastics and growth, fine and growth motor skills and engagement and socialization. But what I didn't realize was that for my child who had sensory dysregulation and overstimulation of visual processing disorder and all these other things, that all the sounds and visuals were literally causing him to melt down. I didn't know.
Yeah.
A mom came to me and said, that's how my daughter is at home. And I thought, no way, your daughter is not that at home, because she was so together out. It was chaotic. And so she introduced me to a behavioral psychologist who came to my house and said, he has so much empathy, but there's so much going on within him and he can't articulate it. There's something with processing that's slow, that's not allowing him to say what he needs to say. So fast forward, we got him into a school, a preschool. We had a behavioralist that had worked with her, trauma informed, shadowing, journaling, trying to figure it out. His teacher happened to be a former psychologist, and there's a whole backstory to kind of another piece of it. It'll take 10 minutes. I won't go into it right now. It's on my website. It's my first true advocate. You'll see that, like who advocated for my son. But all of those things help to shape who I am. And so I can't say there was one particular turning point, because there's been pivots on this journey at every pause point and detour. And then my younger one came in and we thought everything was great, developing neurotypically. And then all of a sudden between 6 and 8, or between 3 and 8, everything started to shift. Whereas my other one, it was like right away we knew things were happening. So it's just been lots of starts, stops, and shifts.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I imagine, you've had a lot of opportunity to have experience in the IEP realm and, the educational system and, with your own sons. And I want to talk more about that as you're supporting your clients too. And I know you shared with me that you have, you've been told by others you have a gift of bringing people together, and even with disagreements, and IEPs can be heated and stressful, and all bring up all the emotions. And I'd love for you to share kind of what that looks like and how you do that, and how that has shaped the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, so that all just, it really comes in. And I know we were going to talk about this, so hopefully it's okay if I kind of bring this in
Yeah.
now, my 3Cs journey map, because that really threads into how I'm helping families or organizations, but we're talking about families right now. So what's really bringing people together, even in the disagreement, it goes further than that. It goes to, I have, and many people think that call BS on this, but I know for certain it is a thing that I have. I can walk into a room and within the first 10 minutes, I can know how I need to talk with somebody or to somebody in order to get something from them. Whether it's clarity, whether it's calm, it doesn't matter. It could be anything. Yeah. And one might say that's judgment. To me, it's not judgment. It's reading the room, understanding what my gut's telling me, recognizing patterns, and then being able to come to a place of collaboration and partnership to move forward. Now, it does require everybody in the room to be willing to go there. So I can do it, but if you on the other end are not willing to meet me there, then it will continue to be defensive and combative. Because what I've learned over the years is I can't make somebody see a different perspective. I can't make somebody truly understand the magic in what I can do in those moments. That's shining that in my neurodiversity, shining that light on the table. Yeah. But if you're not willing to go there with me, it does become, your wall goes up, you become defensive. So sometimes I have to step back when I'm working with the clients, and even in a meeting. So I could use my 3Cs journey map even in a meeting where the whole starting point is getting clear. So really we're moving through those linear illusions that what is happening right now, which I would call the messy middle, because anything that's uncomfortable to me is considered the messy middle. And so instead of seeing those things as dead ends, or we're not going to get anywhere because it's my opinion versus your opinion, you see it as a start of a bridge. So as we get clearer and we're willing to see the other person's perspective and not just see it, but process it and take accountability for your part in it, then you start to see that bridge.
Yeah.
And then you start to get confident that it's okay to be in the muck. It's okay to recognize that the things that you don't know are actually data points that can lead you to clarity, not threats. The things that you don't know that I know, I'm not here to threaten you.
Yeah.
I'm here to elevate you. But if you don't see it that way, you will take it as a threat. And so then the third part of it is the courage and the willingness to sit in that comfortableness and to be in that middle and to lean into those that know something that you don't, instead of defending your own position as to why your experiences or exposures are better than what I'm trying to lift up. Because I'm never saying personally that either one of us is better than the other. I'm saying that we have differing perspectives and we need to meet in that messy middle to get from stuck to success or stuck to solution.
Yeah.
And that then drives a pathway toward consistent confidence, because you come to a place where you understand that vulnerability is strength and that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of, I'm in this with you. Yeah. This is a partnership, and together we're going to be able to do so much more than we could do alone for each other, for the kid, for the organization. So for whatever it is that we're working through.
Yeah. Incredible. It makes so much sense. And, it is a skill set that not everybody has. It's really a unique awareness. And I love that you talked about just kind of reading the room and just being really present. It sounds like very intuitive and present. And I'm curious where you feel this came from. Does this come from life experience? Do you feel like you've always had this gift? Where do you think this came from?
I think I've always had it, and yet it was completely suppressed for many years because so many people don't believe it or understand it, that I had to, in order to survive, I had to lock it away. And I had to tell myself, what you are feeling right now cannot be true because others say so. How you are feeling cannot be real because others say so. Your big emotions aren't really supposed to be that big because others say so. And so for many, many, many years, I was living in that place. And because of that and the traumas and the triggers, I'm not going to say I'm always the calmest person in the room, because when those traumas come back up from all of the being silenced and pushed down and diminished, it will sometimes come out in a way. And I'll say, I'm not being defensive. I'm actually angry. I'm angry that you're using the fact that I am sharing with you that this is a trigger for me by telling me just get over it, by telling me when are you going to take responsibility for it. That tells me that you don't understand trauma. You don't understand that you're now fueling the fire and not helping to regulate me. You're actually being part of the problem by dysregulating me more, instead to share, I see that you're getting angry. How can we rephrase this versus having to tell you, I need you to do this, because when I tell you I need you to do this, then you tell me that I'm telling you what to do.
Right.
So no matter what I do, whether I share it or I tell it, I'm still going to be met with it being the wrong thing. And that's what I grew up with. I grew up with, no matter what I said, no matter how I said it, if the other person didn't understand it, I was wrong. And so when I'm approaching a situation with that, then my calm intuition, it does fall by the wayside because I end up in trauma response.
Right. Yeah.
And so sometimes our actions and reactions are absolutely not what we want. And while the other person may walk away feeling like they are empowered, I'm walk away playing it over in my head 16,000 times, wondering what I could have done differently. And so I have that intuition, but I also have that high sensitivity and that self-awareness of, and the training now and the therapy now to be able to start to unpack it and realize, wait a minute, my intuition was right there. Did I act in the best manner possible? No. Did they trigger my trauma? Yes. Are we both responsible for some of those things? Yes. How they made me feel, is it still valid? Yes. And so I take those things into those meetings when I'm working with clients. And oftentimes I'm that objective party for them because I'm not having to be emotional. I get emotional sometimes in those meetings. I'll cry sometimes if something great happens or something awful, because I'm there for the child. But that intuition and being able to talk to people and recognize which type of tone I even need to take with which different person, when I need to ask somebody for their opinion before I share my opinion so that they feel validated first. Those are those things that I was born with, but I was told to ignore for so many years. I spent the last 6 years working with my therapist through the things that have worked and not worked for me, and how unbecoming to become, finding clarity in the chaos, which we'll talk about that later. That is all part of me getting to this place of trusting my intuition, even if I don't show up as my best self that day. And then I leverage it with the people that I work with.
Yeah. Incredible. So well said. And just, I can see, all of that work that you put in, you can really articulate it well. And
Thank you.
It works. And that's hard to get to, that place. A lot of people don't get there. You have to put in a lot of work, and that's fantastic. And what I love is that you're able to be your own authentic, true self through the process. And that's the ultimate goal. I think that's when we have the most peace. And so, one of the things you shared with me when we met was you shared this statement, I work with you, not for you. What does that look like in your practice?
Yeah. I want to go back to one thing you said. You're talking about authentic self. And the way that I think about that now is I am finally, once again, free to be me.
Mm-hmm.
And so how I work with you, not for you, what that looks like is I walk you through those sections of clarity, confidence, and courage. I don't necessarily talk about those in those terms. I literally put it down so that when I explain it to others, because that middle makes sense to me, but it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. I had to work really hard to come up with what I described, because for me, it just makes sense in my head. I couldn't articulate it in that manner. But I also use my other framework, which is my RAPE ideas. And I've started to call it my pathway because it goes nicely with the journey map. And it's reflecting, implementing with a small I, because it's implementations happen in micro moments, practicing and evaluating. So when I leverage those two parts together, when I'm working with people, I truly am meeting them where they are, understanding what's important for them, how much they want me, if we're talking about at the IEP table or 504 plan table, how much do you want me to lead the conversation versus sit back and just chime in on occasion? And I think that's where I'm also different than a lot of the advocates that are out there. Well, one, my background is super eclectic, right? We've gone through that. So I pull in all those experiences. Yeah. But I don't come in saying nothing, and I don't come in demanding everything. So there's these two ends of the spectrum, right? Where some people will sit back and just let the person talk, and then they'll debrief them later and have them lead it. And other times they'll just come in and demand this, and this, which is to me more of what a lawyer is intended to do when there's legal things going on. And that's how I've worked in unison with lawyers over time. They'll always say to me, and it's great because I thread through that middle, they take care of the legal pieces. And that's, there's my middle. Like I love that middle. Yeah. So I work with you. I work with like a train the trainer philosophy. So if you want at first for me to take the lead on the entire meeting and turn to you and say, we talked about this, Brooke, 2 nights ago. I'd like you to share with them what you shared with me about this, or they'll look at me, give me a look like, I think I need you to articulate that for me or with me or clarify it. Yeah. So that's what I mean by working with you. People pay me to work with them, not for them. This is truly a partnership. And those that don't want that partnership, it's not in alignment with me being free to be me. Because if I'm not me, you're not going to get the best of what I can help you with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, I love that approach because I think when some advocates come in really, really hot, it can create a dynamic that is more tense. And, not that there's not a place for that. Sometimes maybe there is, but I know most families I've worked with always really want to have a place where they don't actually need an advocate in the room because they trust the team and they're all working together collaboratively, and it's more relaxed, even though it's more, it's a formal process. I think that's the ultimate goal, right? It takes some time to get there often, but I love that.
I think the other thing is though, that people need to understand having someone like me in the room should be a benefit. The school team should never see me or never feel that I'm a threat. And instead, I'm helping them see things from a different perspective. Talking about neurodiversity as the prism lighting the table. Right? I talk about that all the time. And it's not just lighting the table, it's the prism. So that comes in many shapes and sizes and colors. And so when I walk into the room and I'm being introduced to a new team that I haven't worked with, I just did this yesterday. I say I'm a neurodiversity consultant. I am here because parents have asked me to be here. I'm part of the team now. I am here to be in collaboration with all of you. And I'm here for the student. We're all here for the student. And so that's that neurodivergent child, that's the light of the table. It's that particular person and what does their prism look like? And then my neurodiversity, my neurodivergent thinking is helping to also guide that conversation and inform it. But even with like, I'll help with some supplemental aids, accommodations, special considerations, but sometimes with the IEP goals, sometimes we'll write some, but oftentimes, and I said this to the team yesterday, I didn't want us to write them for you because you are the expert in the room on writing the goals. I just want to make sure that we have the appropriate ones that we can ensure going to help this child close the gaps and grow. Like that's my role there. And if I'm coming in guns a-blazing, then no one's going to listen to me because they're going to think that I'm trying to tell them how to do what they're doing, but I'm not. I play a very different role. Teachers teach, I educate.
Yeah, definitely.
This show is brought to you by Therapeutic Approach to Growth. Therapeutic Approach to Growth helps families with relationship and behavioral needs. Their holistic programs are individualized to honor and respect each family and their autistic son or daughter's sense of self through programs such as relationship development intervention, naturalistic ABA, and animal-assisted services. If you're finding yourself frustrated or discouraged with your current behavioral programs and would like to see more long-term meaningful growth for you and your family, then contact TAG today at www.tagforgrowth, that's tagforgrowth.com, to learn more about how to schedule a consultation or how they can offer you the help your family needs, whether in person, remotely, or in a school setting. Again, that's www.tagforgrowth.com.
Now, some teachers will educate too. I'm just saying when you're teaching to a text, you're teaching. Like you're not educating because you're teaching a specific. I go off all the time because I'm trying to educate the room.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. And, I can imagine that it's effective because a lot of times teachers and IEP teams will feel like they're being judged or they're being critiqued or, the advocates in the room. I have a good friend that's a special ed teacher and she tells me her experiences and, with all the advocates she works with and it's hard. It's hard to be on that end and they're busy and they've got a lot going on and it's all tricky. So, it's not an easy process to navigate and really do it with fidelity and do it well. But it's, it sounds like what your approach is really having a high impact. And so now I know you mentioned the train the trainer. And when we spoke, you also talked about, if I remember correctly, that there are times when parents are able to take the role on themselves and you can get them to that place. So I'd love for you to share just a little bit more about that level of success in your program.
Yeah. So I have two now. So I know when we talked, I had one, but I think both of them are really, really interesting. I mean, there's several, but these are just two that are current. So I think that they're great to look at. So one of them, and I might just pick one and do a different one, but one of them, the one that we had talked about, I'll share that one first. So Mom and I had worked together for several years. Mom came to me because there was talk about they wanted to take her daughter off of diploma track. And Mom was adamant that this child had a lot of learning left in them and they were only in third grade. And so she was trying to proactively prepare for going to transition to middle. I've never met a parent who was so in alignment with the data and the information. Now, her background made it very relevant once I got to know her, how she came across collecting all this specific data. We had Excel sheets. So she did a lot of work and we partnered together through these things weren't happening. These things were happening. This isn't offering FAPE, free and appropriate public education. This was missing. She needed to be in a more restrictive environment to get the specialized instruction she needed a smaller setting. So we compiled all of these things. I'm going to just go through this a little bit quicker. So going to middle school, they still didn't want come to find out that in my first meeting with this particular school psychologist, I found out after that first meeting, it was very combative, that person was the reason this mom hired me in the first place. But I didn't know that going in. I wish I had. I would have approached it a little bit differently. But that was the situation. It got so bad that we did end up having to hire a lawyer to work with us. Oh, she hired a lawyer. So the lawyer and myself partnered very closely. We did end up getting her a non-public placement throughout middle school. Not only did she close gaps in some of the subject areas, one that she was about 3+ grade levels behind, she's now above grade level in. And she was in a meeting a couple weeks ago for the transition, kind of talking through, I believe it was a transition for high school, because they start doing kind of internships and on-the-job training and things like that to get them prepared for life after high school. And she came into the meeting. She'd never been in one of our meetings. I didn't go because it got scheduled at the last minute and mom didn't want to bother me. And she's like, I think we've got this. So she told me afterwards that not only did she do it on her own, but she did it with her daughter present, who got up, shared what she needed, shared what she wanted, and talked about what would happen next. So there's a transformation, time. And then I'm going to do a different one that I thought. There's another one where a child was supposed to go to a comprehensive middle school. We're an inclusion county where I live. And the head of the special ed team there decided before the meeting even started that they couldn't support this child, which I still don't agree with that decision, but they already made it. So that was a whole big thing. We had to go and get compensatory and other things because that wasn't what should have happened. We went to this other school that was more restrictive and they said would be better. But the way the school is created right now, that programming was more for kids that had emotional disabilities, that were very agitated all the time, rather than a child that was autistic, that had behaviors, but triggered by very different triggers. So, right, show up the same way, but for different reasons. So that wasn't working. There ended up being a lot of school refusal. Things were not happening. So we ended up working with the team, having to get the central office team involved, and transitioning them to a public day school, which was more appropriately suited for this child. They started there in the middle of middle school. They're now in high school. The child is also now coming to their meetings. The child is no longer having school refusal. They're adamantly sharing, even with their parents, that they do not want to go back to the comprehensive school, because this school is one that feels inclusive. It's working for them. They're getting straight. This quarter, I just got the report card yesterday, straight A's. This child had school refusal, was getting C's, D's, and sometimes not even completing assignments, not because they weren't capable. This child's brilliant. It was because the environment wasn't appropriate. So those are a couple of life impacts.
Huge. It's huge. It's life-changing for the whole family. And it's such a testament to not giving up and understanding that, sometimes it's the environment, and I've seen that happen where you change the environment and the child is like a night and day difference and thriving versus, failing. And it's not their fault, when they're failing. They needed a different environment. And it's so hard in those moments for parents that I've seen just being in them, and for you to be there to kind of help them navigate that process is a real gift, because it is not an easy place to be, especially because those solutions aren't easy to find or easy to get.
It isn't. And it is a team effort. And that's like, as what I just described, had those two families not been willing to work with me, if they just wanted me to work for them, we wouldn't have gotten there. And I will say, one of the parents of one of the families started coming in the meetings and was wanting the opposite of what the child wanted. That was the second story I shared. And I still to this day have to keep pulling that parent back onto the bus with us, because at this point, especially now that this child's in high school, this is their journey to walk through. And we need to get on the bus with them. We need to have parameters and constraints, because we are still the parents or the adults. That child's voice matters so much in these transformative years. And so that's where, and they listen to me. Sometimes I have to go and talk to dad. Sometimes I have to go talk to mom. Sometimes I play the middleman, like I'm like a ping pong. But they both trust me enough to have the conversations and listen to my perspective, even if they don't really understand it or even agree with it. They're willing to do it because they know that this is my life's work. This is what I do every day. If you go back, I can say I have 50 plus years of experience in it because I grew up undiagnosed and I lived through it myself. But as a professional, doing it 20 years with my kids, my oldest at least, and since 2016, for 10 years as a business. But I was doing it all those other years too. And when people are willing to come to me, I'm willing to come to them.
Yeah, I love that. Such a collaborative experience. And it really is empowering for the parents to really be able to, have a sounding board, but also know that, their opinion matters and they can talk through it with you and get support, and that's such a gift as well. And now let's talk about your book. So you are a co-author of the book, Confident You, The Raw Conversations. And I know there's 22 other contributing authors. So you wrote a chapter in that book. So tell us a little bit more about what the book is all about.
Yeah, so it's broken out into 4 parts, and it came out in December, so I don't remember the parts off the top of my head.
Okay.
But the lead author, if you will, Julie DeLuca Collins, she has a podcast as well, and she is a business leader, and she's been in education, she's been in all sorts of things. So she brought together a group of us that had been guests on her podcast that she felt were in alignment with what she envisioned for this book. She offered it out to X number of them. So many of us decided to, go in and do it. And each of us has a chapter about ourselves. Sometimes it's about unbecoming. Sometimes it's about becoming. Sometimes it's about letting go. And so it's broken out into these 4 sub-components of the work. My chapter is called my chapter is chapter 12.
Okay.
And it is called Unbecoming to Become, Finding Clarity in the Chaos.
Okay, great.
And the goal of the book is for others to recognize that they're not alone, and that while your journey is your journey, some of us have been in that same ocean, maybe not in that same boat. And each story has some takeaways, some pause points, and some action items. So it talks about if you read my chapter, it starts actually in my moments of burnout, and then it goes a little bit backwards and forwards. There's a glimpse into the story that I just shared about the diploma. It's the beginning side of that entire story is in there. Then there's also one about how I helped a male executive transform into a new role and find his way back to himself. So it gives both bookends of it, both from the professional side and the parental, but also a little glimpse and journey into a little bit more about me and how I finally got to a place where I can be free to be me.
I love that. I think that these stories and in your life experience and others, healing journeys can help so many people. I had another guest on that wrote a book, Chris Carrazas, and he went through burnout too and was diagnosed later in life, and fantastic person. It was such a great opportunity to chat with him, and he shared his story through his book. And I just think there's so much power to that, of being able to share your journey and what you've overcome, but what you went through. And there's so many people out there that are feeling similar ways. So
absolutely. And I always say I never overcome it. I'm still moving through it.
Yeah.
It's like that old saying, feel the fear and do it anyway. You can feel the fear, but if you don't allow your body to move through the fear, just give me chills. Because that's something that I'm still learning, that your body holds everything, even if you think you've gotten over it. So when you don't allow yourself to feel those fears and to move through them to resolution, to solution, to a place of calm and safety, they stay in you. And that's like one of the biggest things I've learned in the last 6 years is things don't go away just because you push them aside. And there is no such thing as mind over matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so true. I think that's such a message of hope too, that you can move through them, with putting in the work and addressing it. You heal and, be on that journey. That's what we're all here for, right? We're just continuing to grow and continuing to work through the things that we were dealt, because nobody gets through this without things being dealt to them. So I love it. Well, now, what's your biggest vision with Journey to Bloom? And I know you have some exciting things you're working on, and I'd love for you to share about those as well.
Yeah, so you want to make me put them out there so they have to come into reality.
That's
right?
it.
Yes. So as the school year wraps up, because I'm on site at my son's school as their neurodiversity consultant. So as school winds down here and schools wrap up for the year here in Maryland, I'm going to be leaning in more to creating some workshops. I've been asked to do this for years, and the intention of it is to create these at a reasonable, or what I hope people will see as a reasonable price point, in order to give them a little bit more about one. Right now I'm toying with it being called the empowered roadmap. Sorry, I couldn't say that. And it would talk about the 3 C's journey map. It would go through the right ideas pathway and just bringing some of those things into better understanding and clarity. So then if people want to go back and look at it again and, oh, I got this out of it this time, this out of it, or they're like, oh, you know what, I think I need to work with Lisa now. It would give them a way at a much lower price point than even having like a 1-hour session with me to get a feel for how I do things and what I do, more than just what they see on Insta or, or LinkedIn or Facebook when I do little videos. Yeah. The other thing that's on the horizon is I have several one-pager PDFs. One is like, when you're thinking about your journey, 6 ways that you can think about your journey. And I end up keeping that title, but also like, how do you build a team? What does that team look like? So I have some one-pagers that I will start gifting for people, but then I will be also recording mini sessions that dive deeper into. So I have this piece of paper. It's kind of like, okay, I have this diagnosis. So what now? What? How? What? And I'll walk through those pieces with those PDFs. So then for a nominal fee, you'll get not just the paper, but you'll get how that can help you get started so that people can start to get unstuck. And then if they still feel like they need me, again, same thing. It's a way to get a taste of what I do, not for free, but for much lower than what they would pay to engage me in services, and just get that out there further, because the things that I'm talking about can be used not just across the states, but across the world. And I see that when I'm working with others, that these are things that might be happening a little bit differently across the world. One has a lot more diagnoses, the other has a lot more information, but you need both to really move together forward in the best ways possible, like you talk about, Brooke, with the work you do. So those are some of the things I'm excited about. And some of these things will work across corporate and some will be specifically for one or the other. But so those are some of the things that I'm working on building out.
I love it. Fantastic. Well, it's exciting. You just put it out there. It's going to come to fruition. It's fantastic. Well, good. Well, let's share where people can find the book and find you. And I'm assuming all those new offerings will be on your website as well. So go ahead and share where all this is going to be housed.
Yes. So at some point, they will be on the website. But if you have questions about them, because I'm just getting them in play, I can definitely get some of those things to you. So you can feel free to contact me at my website, which is www.journey2bloom.com. My email address is lisa@journey2bloom.com. And you can also find me on Insta at journey2bloom.com. So very easy. Or under my name on LinkedIn or Facebook.
Okay, great. And the book is also on Amazon, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It is a paperback or an ebook. We've been working on an audiobook. I'm not sure. When we try to do everybody's voices, and it seems like it's really hard to bring it together that way, but we wanted the passion of each of us to come through. And it's becoming a harder project to bring to fruition than we thought. So right now, those 2 options are available.
Awesome.
The ebook and the printed.
Okay, perfect. Great. Well, thank you so much for being here, Lisa. It was such a pleasure to get to know you better and meet you and hear about the amazing work you're doing and just your journey. It's been fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been so much fun. And if you do ever want to get back on and talk about that, I think I wrote it down, the going from survival mode to today. I think I would be happy to engage in that conversation.
Yeah, let's do it. I think it'd be great. I'm fascinated. I would love to have you share that. And it's so relatable to so many people. So I think it's an important topic to talk about. So fantastic. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
I'm dancing on the edge again. The wind is calling my name. I'm dancing on the edge again. This time I'm not looking back there. You can change me, you can tell me down. I'll leave echoes in every place I find. I'll break the molds with rebels mind. I'm a hurricane of free born mind.
The information provided on this podcast is for general informational purposes only. The content shared is based on the experiences, opinions, and perspectives of the hosts and their guests and should not be construed as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment recommendations. The discussions and topics covered are intended to foster understanding and awareness of autism therapies, but are not a substitute for professional medical guidance. Before making any decisions regarding therapies or treatments, we strongly encourage you to consult with a qualified healthcare provider who can provide personalized recommendations based on your unique circumstances. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree that the hosts, guests, and producers are not responsible for any consequences, damages, or outcomes arising from the use or application of any information during the show.